Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. The podcast all about traveling and living in Latin America since 2014. Today I'm joined by Sam Miller, known for his popular YouTube channel, Sam Miller Life. He's also heavily involved in real estate and Airbnb in Latin America, traveling Latin America. I believe he's also Canadian. Sam, how's it going, man?
Doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Are you Canadian or did you just travel from Canada to Argentina?
I have a father who is Canadian, and I've spent a couple of years in Whistler. My mom's American, and I was born in Australia, so I guess I'm some type of super gringo. Gringo Criollo, I call myself down here.
Okay. So you feel more Australian than anything, I guess. That's where you
I
like
think
went to high
so. I
school
think
and stuff.
we're more a product of our environment than our ancestry sometimes.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad you got some Canadian heritage.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, so
I love Canada. I was having a great time living there in Whistler for a couple of years, but Australia was calling me home, and a friend suggested, "Hey, let's ride motorbikes to South America on the way back." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." At first, I thought he meant a bicycle, but when
mhm.
I found out it was motorbike, I'm like, "Wait a second, I gotta buy a motorbike, learn how to ride it." But yeah, 6 months later, I was riding south into the unknown.
And what year was this?
This is 2009. So, young graduate trained to be a cog in the system, not a lot of job prospects like that don't involve 3 decades of climbing a ladder. The global financial system was having a bit of a hiccup at that time. Um, yeah, I was like, I'd always looked for other opportunities. I'd always looked for something else. And I guess it was part of just procrastination, just to like extend the adventure a bit more and see what was out there. And it happened to be Colombia that made me realize, well, okay, maybe I don't need to go back to Australia. Maybe I can, do this life somewhere else. And I'd been traveling quite a bit, right? It took me about 7 months to get to Colombia, about 4 months to get to Argentina. But when I hit Colombia, I saw something. I saw a country that was underrated. I'd heard a lot about Costa Rica and Panama, and they were kind of underwhelming in some ways. And when I got to Colombia, I was overwhelmed by how much was going on and the variety, the diversity. Traveling by motorbike, you really get an interesting cross section of the country, and so I was really blown away by how much was going on in Colombia, and that it really was off the radar at that time.
hmm
Even back the backpacker circuit was kind of avoiding Colombia. They were sticking more to the southern parts of South America. So
hmm
I was like, oh well, I'm looking for a life, a quality of life. I'm looking for opportunities. Surely there's something I can do here, and that's when I kind of settled down after traveling around the world for 2 to 3 years. At that point, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna slow down because
Okay.
new city, new people, new friends, new city, new people, new friends. It's a cycle that was starting to feel shallow. And so that was when I first realized, like, it's not about travel forever. And I think it's a
hmm
bit about connecting deeper. And so I chose Colombia to connect deeper, and I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I want to get into Colombia in detail, but I also want to get the timeline super crisp for myself and for the audience. So in 2008, how old were you at that time?
I was like 24.
You're like 24, you grew up in Australia, you put some money together. All Australians, as a rite of passage, kind of go traveling somewhere between like age 20 and 25. So was this Canada to Argentina trip basically your first sort of big rite of passage trip as a young Australian guy?
I graduated, what was it, 2004. I was like I was taught the end of an era, like the last textbooks of how to do business pre-internet, pre-social
Hmm.
media, even like
Hmm.
2004. Like, the game changed, especially in marketing, which is what I was kind of doing. Um, and so I went to an office for 3 months, and I'm like, this can't be it. And especially in
Hmm.
Australia, it's such a lucky country. It's so they're so blessed. And when you are so comfortable, sometimes you begin to worry about things that aren't important. And so I always kind of had that. And coming from an international family as well, I knew that I wanted to get out there.
For
South
sure.
Korea, teaching English, that was my first port of call. That was my first kind of like, okay, this is a place where with a degree, you can bank 30, 40, 50 grand if you go hard on private students. You can
Hmm.
build a lot of capital really quick. So that was my first step. Did a year there, and then went to Canada to live on the mountains there and have a bit of fun snowboarding and enjoying my 20s with the knowledge that, okay, I had to kind of set up a career at some point.
No, for sure. The Whistler ski bum life is definitely a fun one for a couple of years, right?
I got into a quality assurance position. I was tasked with doing surveys in the lift line, but I'm like, well, why don't we just sit down on this chair and ride up the mountain? I'll ask you on the way up. And so I got paid to ski and snowboard. Basically, one of the best jobs in the world. Although it only paid
Okay.
about $12 an hour.
So I'm guessing you left from Whistler and from the mountains of BC in 2008. 2008, sorry. And how long did it take you to get down to Argentina? And did you go all the way down to Ushuaia? And what kind of year did you arrive in? 2010,
Yeah.
2011? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so that was the end of 2009 when we took off and just missed the winter. Um, we started stealth camping. Obviously, I had some savings. I'd been it ended up being about $1,1200 a month. That was the budget. But before we went, we didn't really have an idea, so we were just trying to live as frugally as possible to travel as long as we needed to. And so through the US, we did a lot of stealth camping, just camping for free in random forests and off the side of roads behind trees or wherever we could find a
And this is
quiet
on your way
spot to
down
set up camp.
through like the
Yeah.
US and so forth.
Yeah, totally impressed by the US. Like, really underestimated how much fun we'd have in the US, like camping next to the Grand Canyon, like
For sure.
unbelievable, with the stars and, great memories and setting up camp and, picking up food in the towns and just a great way to travel through the US. Crossed through into Mexico and things got a little bit harder because everything's fenced off. It's really hard to find a nice piece of nature that's secluded
Stealth
and kind
camping
of private
spot.
and safe. Yeah. So we that's when we started staying in like hostels or hotels and getting rooms, because especially with the, to pay $5, $10, $15 for a room, it was affordable at that point as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, it took about 7 months to get through. Got to Panama. That's where you have to either, because of the Darien Gap, not the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal, there's a bridge over it. It's no
Yep.
problem. You cross the bridge into Panama City, but then after the city, you're faced with the Darien Gap, which is a stretch of jungle about 40 miles of swamp and rivers. The first guy to do it overland, he deassembled his motorbike into four different backpacks and basically shuttled four different backpacks like a mile at a time. It took him three
Insane.
months, and he was the first guy to do Alaska to Argentina overland, completely
That's
overland.
insane. And so you need to take what's it called? Like a ferry for the car, or you need to ship the car, and
Well,
and you ship it typically into Cartagena, I think.
if you have a car, you can get a container or you can share a container. For the motorbike, you have two options. One of them is through the San Blas Islands on a boat.
Mm,
And it depends on the boat. Some of those captains are not known for bringing enough food and water. or even dropping the motorbike over the side as they're trying to get it from onto the smaller boat to bring it to the shore. Like there's been some stories there. So it was going to be 2 weeks sitting around in Panama City. So we put the motorbike on a cargo plane and then flew on a passenger plane. Costs
Whoa.
about the same. Yeah. So you can do like
Put the bike on a
it's about
plane. That's crazy.
$500. Yeah, cargo plane. It was $900. The other option was $500 for the motorbike, $500 for yourself on a boat. It takes about 3 to 4 days. The way we did it was $900, putting it on a cargo plane into Bogota, and then we just flew into Bogota and picked up our bikes at the
You
airport
fly
there.
separately than the cargo plane.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so it took you 7 months from Canada to Panama into Colombia, and then what'd you do from there?
Started a loop of Colombia, and that's when I fell in love, man. That place is unbelievable. It's 5 different countries in once, the different climate zones. It's a country that has its own unique situation. It's been isolated for such a long time, and at that time, this is 2010, Colombia. The 80s and 90s in Colombia were rough. That was when this was like a raw negotiation of unregulated cash flow, right? So there are all these different groups and governments, and they had to try to figure it out. Early 2000s, Alvaro Uribe comes in as a president, does some harsh stuff, becomes a hero for some, a foe for others, brought a lot of security across the countryside, and the situation improved. And you see that in the economy and the GDP. It started shooting up. Things had calmed down. They had kind of they brought things in order. 2010, you could tell in the psychology, and there wasn't a lot of tourism there. Everyone was avoiding their country. So I'd often get asked, why are you here? What are you doing here? And I just done this loop of the country. I'm like, you guys, serious? You guys are, you have more than a Costa Rica, than a Panama. You have so much going on here in terms of an offering to the international tourism, international lifestyle. It's incredible what's going on here. So it was partly they've been isolated. They didn't have the internet, and it's such a mountainous country. You've got the top, it's where the Andes Mountains kind of form. So you've got 3 branches of the Andes Mountains that divide the country. And before that, you'd hear the headlines of saying a bus got kidnapped, and there was a massacre on a bus, and there was so no mom or grandma would let their kids travel across country. It would take 12 to 18 hours to get from A to B anyway. Plane flights were expensive compared to the average salary in the country. So it was really not a lot of interaction between these different regions of Colombia. And because I got there right when it was starting to open up, it was as if the country was getting to know itself. And that became an interesting chapter of my life, and the transformation of Colombia, and seeing that over the past 10 years really come into its own.
Yeah, I can imagine. So 2010, Colombia's pacifying. It's opening up to free markets and all the rest of it. I actually just Googled it. When did Nicky Jam go to Medellin? Because I don't know if you know Nicky Jam, the reggaeton singer, but he's from Puerto Rico. But he kind of went out of popularity in Puerto Rico, and he went to Medellin to restart his career. And so I was like, when did Nicky Jam go to Medellin? Because it was early. And according to Google, he went in 2010. Right. So you're going to have to check the exact month and see who was the first foreigner to put Medellin on the map, yourself or Nicky Jam. But you were neck and neck.
Yeah, I mean, Medellin was it's such a, it's so reggaeton. It's they've got it going on. Medellin and Puerto Rico, they know what's up. They know how to have fun, man. And that was part of it. Each different region has its own thing going on, and the nightlife, especially I'm mid-20s, exploring on the motorbike, such a wild time there.
I can believe it. I want to like kind of make our way through the the Pan American trip all the way down to Argentina, and then we'll come back to Colombia because that's obviously become a big focus for you in terms of being one of your bases, Colombia, and a place that you're actually doing business as well. You're investing as well, so that's all super interesting, and we want to get back to that. But so you cruised around Colombia in 2010 early on, but ultimately you decided to keep going. And I'm guessing maybe you went down to Pasto to that crazy bridge church thing, uh, and
Yeah.
then on into Ecuador and continued your way down through the Andes.
Yep. Yep. I did the loop and I went back to Bogota. Like Medellin, I could see where that was going. I saw like, okay, this is going to be like that tamarindo or that just popular like a gringo bubble. I could see it like a mile away where Medellin was going in terms of
Mm-hmm.
its transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, cool, that'll be fun. But I dove into it in Bogota, mega city, 10 million
Yep.
people in the downtown, the cross section of the entire city, Candelaria Centro. Like that was, yeah, I spent 8 months there and I got to know what was going on. I'm like, okay, this is good. I got a girlfriend at that time, but I'm like, no, I still have this Argentina, thing. What if there's something even crazier out there? And so
Mm-hmm.
I set out again, passed through Ipiales, where that amazing bridge is, into Ecuador and Peru, and did the Machu Picchu. And it's South America is a whole different beast. It's like it's 2 or 3 days before you're arriving at the next kind of point of interest. Whereas in
Mm-hmm.
Central America, it's really 2 or 3 hours, and you're at the next beach, or the next volcano, the next pyramid, the next
Sure.
ancient civilization. Like it's all very like the riding
Yeah.
is much
Tight.
more lighter in Central America. Once you're in South, it's days of riding to get to the next spot.
That's a
But
good point.
yeah, I was moving a little fast. I was traveling solo at that point on Central America, because the Pan Am is really the only way through each country. You end up meeting a lot of other riders, and you can see them a mile away. They're packed. You see the gear on the motorbike, and you have a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of stories and shared pains and
At the gas
victories
station,
to.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, I mean, it was a different adventure, and I was moving a bit faster. So yeah, it took about 4 months to get to Mendoza, and that was where I was faced with the decision to go through all the way through to Ushuaia, the Tierra del Fuego, and get the photo at the end of the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
But my motorbike at that point was such a hub job of a machine at that point. Like my muffler literally blew to pieces in Mexico, and I got a guy who welded like 3 different mufflers together to retrofit. And then, so I had a gnarly sound. I was burning about 1 liter of oil for every tank of gas. I pulled into Mendoza, and
Just
the
dripping out.
yeah, 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 yeah. I pulled in, and the guy's like, "Whoa, whoa, look, look, look!" I'd been riding all day. The gas was just pouring out over my engine. Luckily, it didn't combust. Like it was done. That
Jeez.
it needed a full on rebuild. So from Mendoza to Ushuaia, it's like 5 days of riding, and I would have loved to have seen it, but I think having come from Canada and the Rocky Mountains there, I'm not going to say it's the same, but it's like for the reward for that 5 days of fairly heavy. It's on the like that sandy type road. I was like, no, we got to get this bike in. So I got in just in time for New Year's for Buenos Aires, and caught the Dakar rally, because that was in Argentina at the time. So
Oh,
I got that was some of that terrain. It's beautiful out there, but for me, Argentina was really one of my least favorite countries to ride, because the roads are just so straight. I literally like wrapped a bungee cord around the accelerator, because I was riding straight for like 12 hours, which is the hardest road to ride on a motorbike, is a straight road.
hmm. And this is from Mendoza, sort of over to, I guess, like Cordoba, Rosario, and then down to Buenos Aires.
Yeah, from Mendoza, I went straight east.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just there's good riding to be had there, but for the long distances, and I was just limping the bike in at that point. Yeah, couldn't compare to Colombia. Like Colombia is just mountainous roads everywhere. There's only one strip of road in Colombia from Bucaramanga to the coast
Uh-huh.
that has that effect, but everything else is just curves. It's great for motorcycle riding.
It's fun
Oh yeah,
whipping around. So you're in Buenos Aires, the Dakar Rally. Uh, I guess they host it all around the world, right? And so it's typically a like what are they called? Like buggy car rally, right? Or is it all types of vehicles?
yeah. They do motorbikes, and then they do the buggies, and then they do trucks.
And you did you then participate in the rally?
No, no, no. But I mean, some of the roads that I came in on were part of the course. It's
Okay.
fun stuff, but yeah, never went that deep into it.
And then so so how did you officially basically end the trip? Was it in Buenos Aires or did you
Yeah,
then
yeah.
keep going?
Sold the motorbike to a guy who was going to rebuild it, and flew back into Bogota.
All right. All right. So you ended up in Buenos Aires. You did British Columbia to Buenos Aires, basically.
Yeah,
When did you arrive in Buenos Aires? And so how long did it take you overall? Like how many months?
it was about like 11 months of riding.
That's not bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that wasn't like full on. It was like, stopping in places. Like we took 2 weeks in El Tunco and El Salvador to do Christmas and New Year's because it was a good crew. We hung around, and the beauty of the motorbike is that you're just so free. Like that's
Hmm.
when I was like in flip flops and a singlet. Right, we got in El Salvador. We got a surfboard rack made for the side of the bike, so we could carry a surfboard on the motorbike. I'm riding out on a gravel road 10 minutes outside of town to just like jump in an empty beach and go surfing. Like I
That's
felt
awesome.
what pure freedom was like. Like I remember that really clearly. And you can just we would just feel it out. Like, all right, like, we feel like there's something going on here. Let's stick around. All right, we feel like we're done here. Let's move on. Well, there's a carnival in Panama coming up. Let's move, so we can get there in time for that. Yeah, it's the best way to travel. It's you
That's
know,
awesome. Have you so
yeah,
you've been to Carnival in Panama?
yeah, yeah. What was it Las
Did you go
Tablas?
down to
Yeah,
in Las Tablas? Wow, so you went to the real one.
yeah. That was fun.
That's funny.
Still,
I'm kind
that
of thinking
didn't
about
compare
going
to the
this year.
to the festivales in Colombia. Like the Colombia's got the best ferias for sure.
And the Columbia one is in Barranquilla, I think, or somewhere in the north.
That's one of their bigger ones, yeah. But they, like, yeah, I've had some fun time because there's every little town does their own feria, and they're so random. Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, okay, like, yeah. If you're going on a trip to Colombia, check out where the fairs are happening. You got to check them out. Whichever one, whatever one. They have like a donkey fair. They have a black and white festival. Um, they have musical ones. They have the Manizales has a great one. That's probably my favorite one. Manizales in January, in Cali as
Okay.
well around Christmas. So wherever you are, they're all throughout the year, but definitely check it out. You'll see the real Colombian flavor.
Yeah, Colombia definitely takes the holiday season pretty seriously.
Oh yeah, what, like 17 public holidays every year? I think it's one of the highest in the world. It's they're about the present moment, and that was part of what I really appreciated and admired about the culture in Colombia is that like work, and that might be like something that holds back a lot of like high productive type hustle
Hmm.
mindset. People are at work and they're socializing, they're connecting, and it's
Hmm.
about they have other priorities. And when there's one of these 17 or 18 long weekends every year, which is pretty much every other week, the idea is to go to a finca, which is a country house designed for good times with good people. It'll house 10, 15, 20 people. You
Hmm.
invite family and friends, and you have a barbecue and a pool, and you parchar, you hang out, you
Hang
chill.
out.
Yeah, So it's different priorities there that I think that I really value kind of integrating. And I think a lot of things that have been lost in a more kind of Western individual culture. Right, there is much more of a communal, collective kind of dream. The Colombian dream is that type of country house with people they care about. You know,
For
not kind of
sure.
just their own kind of house with a fence, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the community aspect of Latin America is much stronger. The family bond aspect in Latin America is much stronger. And so you said that you flew from Buenos Aires back to Bogota. So I
Yeah,
guess Colombia was calling. Was it because you were kind of going back for a significant other, or what made you book that first flight to Bogota?
that was it was a little bit of everything. It was, it was that relationship. It was that, like, there's something going on there. Like, I felt like I'd kind of like found an undiscovered gem, because like, why is the world paying attention to Costa Rica and Panama, and they don't know about Colombia? And so I suddenly saw that, I just felt a calling.
Yeah, and dude, I think it was a good call. I think you were right on the ball. Like that was the golden years, according to a lot of people.
Oh yeah,
Just anything up until 2017, 2018, when Colombia really, really started blowing up in the eyes of the world and gringos and international flight connections and whatnot. Um, I noticed on your YouTube channel, and for anyone listening, his Sam's channel is Sam Miller Life. As of this recording, he's got 58,000 subscribers. So you did post your a little bit of stuff from your journey across the Americas 11 years ago, and you kind of took a break from YouTube. And then I see that 5 years ago, you started creating content again about Colombia. So 5 years ago, I guess at some point in 2016 or 2017, you started creating content again about Colombia. Um, what inspired you to sort of start creating content on Colombia? And I guess also, like, what were you doing between 2010 and 2016 in that gap where you weren't on YouTube? Were you in Latin America, or maybe like a little bit everywhere?
yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, well, once I flew back to Bogota, I really settled down, because I'd done the constant travel thing, and I'd seen that, okay, this travel, I'd had enough travel, and I had enough of this. Just, like, you have amazing connections and bonds and shared experiences, but then the next day
Mm-hmm.
you move on to the next city, you keep traveling, and then you're starting from scratch, and that's wonderful, and there's great benefit to doing that for a period of time. But I was definitely
Mm-hmm.
like settling down at that point when I got to Bogota, and I actually picked up a motorbike from a guy from Quebec who did a loop around South America, and he was selling his bike, the exact same bike that I had. So I picked up that and continued kind of the motorbike Colombia lifestyle.
And what type of bike is it?
Is it a KLR 650, Kawasaki KLR 650? Really recommend it. I had the pre 2008 model. From
Mm-hmm.
2008 to 2018, they kind of went a little plasticky, and they
Mm-hmm.
messed up a little bit, because they made it the same way for the what, 30 years before that. So now there's a new
Mm-hmm.
model. I think when the motorcycle calls again, that'll be my next one,
I,
2022 KLR
and
650.
all right, all right. I'm looking at it right now, and it looks it sort of, to describe to the audience, it sort of looks like a dirt bike, but way beefier, like
Yeah,
heavier than like a trick motorbike. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But still holding like dirt bike elements to it. And then I can see some other one examples where they've like attached those. Sort of like side chests on the side and
Yeah.
front and back and everything. And so you can really sort of like load it up and put different like customizations on it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had those side bags, a back
Hmm.
trunk, plus a rack for the surfboard. It's the perfect bike for Latin America. Uh, the other popular ones are probably like your BMWs, maybe a KTM.
Hmm.
They're a little too. technical. If you have issues, you've got to get to a capital city in whatever country you're in. Whereas the KLR 650, some of the police motorbikes are at the 650 level. So, finding chains
Nice.
and sprockets, and you can find parts a little easier, and any mechanic can get in there and have a crack. Whereas if, you're an ABS system and you're in some mountain town somewhere and your brakes aren't working, the mechanic isn't going to know what's up. So there's always kind of a benefit to using something that's a bit more familiar to in the environment.
Yeah, I think this is a really important discussion. I think it's the same principle with cars, where you want a car that has dealerships and people who can work on it all throughout. So people typically would go for like a Toyota 4Runner, Toyota Land Cruiser RAV4,
Mm-hmm.
maybe like a Mitsubishi, or just like something Japanese probably, or even Mercedes they have everywhere. So same principle with bikes, where you're going to want, I guess, a Kawasaki. Who like I feel like BMW. Some people wouldn't be able to work on it with the BMW bikes. I feel like kind of what you're saying, but what are some, like, what are the best brands, or uh, the
I
most
mean, it's
easy to
either the
work on
KLR
bikes?
650 or maybe the Suzuki DR 650 as well, that
Hmm.
you'll kind of find most commonly here, because here they'll only, in local markets, if you're buying it, they charge a huge amount to import foreign bikes. So the locally produced ones are usually like 125 to 250. We're seeing some like 400s come in, like a Himalayan, but beyond that, then you're jumping up to like the BMW 850s or the 1200s, and there's not a lot of in betweeners. So the best way is to buy it in your home country in the U.S. or Canada, or you look on a forum like Horizons Unlimited, and you might find somebody who's finishing a trip and the bike is already decked out, and maybe they're just riding to
That's
Panama and
sick.
then selling it there. And so you could either ride it north, or you could take it across into South America. That's probably the smoother way to get a bike for the road.
Okay. And I know in Mexico, you're in Mexico right now, right?
Yeah.
Me as well. And here there's the brand Italica.
Right. Yeah. 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 I mean, in general, the Chinese brands are AKT, the AKT, the Pulsars. Yeah. You can only expect so much for like, a few $100 for a motorbike.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
is Panama a good market to buy like secondhand bikes, or people who did the big tripper people? Do a lot of them sell in Panama?
Yeah, they do, because that's a big kind of turning point, is whether you put it on the boat or a
Hmm.
plane to take it across there. So some people just ride from the states south of Panama and then sell it there. In that case, you're not really dealing with the Panamanian, like you're not doing a Panamanian title transfer, which is
Hmm.
better, because some of these places don't even allow you to import and therefore sell legally a motorbike. So,
Hmm.
but if you're going a foreigner to a foreigner, there's no issues there, as long as you kind of do the paperwork how you need to.
Yeah, that's good to know. And so you're saying Horizons Unlimited is a good site. What are some other good sites to find
A,
bikes and to find?
ADV Rider, Adventure Rider, and Horizons Unlimited. Those are where most of the overland travelers are hanging out.
Okay. I'm gonna have to check out these communities a little bit more. Overlanders, that was the word I was looking for. Like probably the most common term to refer to people who are doing these big
Hmm.
multi-country trips.
Yeah. And to be honest, it sounds epic, but it's really like, if you can ride a day on a motorbike, you can do this trip. It's just showing up to a new town, and
Yeah, that's a good
getting.
question. Like, do you think, like, if just someone with, I have no skill with mechanical stuff. Like, I grew up riding the subway, so so like that would be my primary concern, is that, like, when something inevitably does happen to the bike, the brakes, the tire, the whatever, I'm not going to be able to personally fix that much, and I feel like I'm just going to get finessed if I can even find a guy to fix it. And you're
Yeah.
kind of like at their whims and not in a good negotiating position. Or what are your thoughts on that? Could like can retirees do this? Like,
Well, retirees that's a different thing because as like a motorbike on the body is, it can be taxing,
true,
right? Especially in some of these
true.
more off-road setups.
Hmm.
You don't need to be a mechanic to do this. Like learning like how to change your brakes, how to take your wheel on it all on and off might help you like in a situation where you do have a flat and you can't wheel or like kind of limp in the bike and you got to maybe take your wheel separately. So having
Hmm.
a couple skills like that are handy. But the beautiful part is the world is full of good people, and you realize that. Like I've had breakdowns in random ass places, and even actually going out to that church at the south of Colombia in Ipiales, chain snapped out of nowhere. I got like a
Hmm.
$15 replica chain that was not designed for the 650, snapped in the middle of nowhere. I tried pushing it, no luck. A dude saw what I was doing. He's like, "Man, you were like, I'll take you into the next city." And I left my motorbike with like a lady who was shorter than my motorbike who had a palm tree farm. And he took me in, he like showed me where the motorbike shop was, and he didn't want to take any money, so I got him some fruit, and he took me back out and put on the chain and got going again. And just got multiple stories where people are just they're ready to help. And in Latin America, everyone has motorbikes. So like if you're in, it's
It's
there's
true.
mechanics everywhere. A motorbike is easy enough to put on a truck if you need to, and I have needed to a few times. But yeah, you realize that it's to get really really screwed. You really got to be out there, and so yeah, it's pretty hard to do to get really really screwed. But in general you'll find that everything always works out, and especially when you're traveling like that, you align your expectations correctly.
Hmm.
It's amazing the kind of the mental development that a trip like that does for you.
That's awesome, man. You've convinced me. I'm doing it.
There
Not sure if it'll
you
be
go.
a bike or like in a Jeep, but I really need to do this Pan American trip for sure. Um, so let's just say you've convinced me. I want to register my bike in Colombia. How do you register a bike in Colombia as a foreigner and get like a license
You
plate and stuff?
don't. You can't. You can't register a used bike in a country. You get what it's called a temporary import. So every
Hmm.
border, you're essentially you're checking out yourself with your passport, and then checking out your bike, and then as you enter the next country, you're getting your passport stamp, and then you go to another little office which is for
Uh-huh.
vehicles, and that's where you
Yeah,
get your temporary vehicle import license. And sometimes you need insurance, sometimes you need a little something. And each border day, dedicate a whole day to doing it. Show up early, expect it'll take all day, and be happy if you get through in an hour or two. Yeah,
makes
that's the way
sense.
through.
I've heard it is easier on a motorbike than with a car for getting these temporary permits, and
Correct.
hopefully each individual process will be faster with a bike than with a car.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little easier, especially for that Panama to Colombia leg.
Hmm. And then again, so with after you finish the trip, you go back to Colombia. Did you just start living there for like several
Yeah,
years
yeah,
immediately, or
yeah. Well,
yeah?
yeah, I'm like, I'll live here 6 months and then see, and then 6 months, and then give it another 6 months, and then I was just living there.
And so my understanding is you can only do like 180 days per 365 days a
Yeah.
year in Colombia. So you're smiling already. So how did you figure
Well,
that out?
it was a different time, and Colombia wasn't as used to tourism. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I have multiple nationalities there. So and
Mm,
in land borders, I'll just say things are more negotiable as well. So that I went to a land border to fix my situation one time. But then I started.
so
I
basically,
was like,
if I had to long story short that you're personally driving to Ecuador, you're doing a visa run, and you're basically, I guess, maybe using I guess you have U.S., Canadian, and Australian passports. You have three.
at that time, yes.
Okay. Do you have more now?
No, I let one expire.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
And then so basically maybe instead of just re-entering on the same passport, you were just using your Canadian and
I
then 6 months later using your Australian and then 6 months later, blah, blah, blah. Is that the idea
It
or?
didn't happen that smoothly, and I wouldn't admit it even if I did do that.
Uh-huh.
But
No,
things were
because it's
different,
an,
and things were a little bit off the system. Now, like I've seen, especially in Colombia, they've updated and integrated the systems here, so that if I'm not saying I did, but if I that wouldn't fly these days.
it's true. It's true. And then so that begs the question, like, how did you regularize your status in Colombia? Did you apply for a
I
residency
mean,
visa at some
at
point?
one point, I overstayed for like a year and a half or even 2 years, and as I said, on land borders, it's easier to fix situations than in an airport.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's various visa options, and that's the idea. And I started seeing an opportunity in real estate because I knew that wherever anyone had money, they always um, invested and protected it and built wealth in real estate. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start real estate. And I saw that when I tried to rent an apartment, no one could speak English, and even the Century 21, they didn't speak English. So I'm like, well, okay, the thing I knew how to do at that time was SEO, how to write a blog article to rank in Google. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started doing that about real estate, writing articles that, as I was learning the market in
Mm-hmm.
English and getting ranked on a website, which turned into a brokerage, which got me onto House Hunters International, um, which was an experience. And then
The TV show.
yeah, yeah, we did a couple episodes there. It was actually the first people that I showed a house to was in front of a TV crew. Because I mean, it turned from a blog into a real estate brokerage,
Mm-hmm.
and so the leads were starting to come in. Bogota, a very different market. It's spread out all over the city. Everyone wants a different thing. They're dealing with a divorce settlement with their wife in Suba, and they need a liens like check, and or they're looking for a fancy penthouse in Beret, or we did commercial as well. We were dealing with hotel investors, medical
Mm-hmm.
resort people. Whereas in Medellin, there's one market, and I think my life would be in a different position right now if I'd stuck in Medellin to do real estate. Because when foreigners go to Medellin, they want poblado. That's it's a simple game there.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah,
started that.
and this is and that's we were writing about a lot of this stuff early on as well. My Latin Life has been around since 2014.
Mm-hmm.
We have articles about how to live in Colombia full time, how to get the investor visa, the pensionado visa, things like that. Of course, we have city guides talking about which neighborhood people might want to stay in Medellin, be it Poblado, Laureles, Envigado, whatever. And of course, city guides on other places like Cali and Barranquilla and stuff. So, uh, you were familiar with it. You were writing it as well, and you were directing your traffic towards real estate investments, which seems to be kind of one of the main business models that I see from like international living or live and invest overseas is they're really sort of funneling people into real estate.
Sure. Yeah, we went from a brokerage in Bogota, and there was a group in Medellin who basically were other traveling entrepreneur types who started a brokerage, started a vacation rental service, and
Mm-hmm.
then another guy who was really the mastermind behind that product, which was a brilliant product, which was the key to our success from that point on, which was combining the purchase, the renovation, the furnishing, and then the administration of a property. So creating a
Turnkey.
turnkey investment, which is high yield. We're talking if you buy an apartment in Colombia unfurnished and you rent it out, you could expect 3 to 5% net ROI each year. By renting it out short term, you could expect, you're going to put in a bit more for the furniture, but you can expect 8 to 12% on
Mm-hmm.
average. So we could actually triple the ROI that investors would find at the time. So this was pre Airbnb. So they kind of had that model, and they were looking to grow. They saw me in Bogota and reached out and said, "Hey, let's join up here." And I'm like, "Let's do it." But when I did that, I basically merged myself out of a job. I was doing the investor relations, the sales, the marketing with the content. They already had that piece, so I found myself in the property management division, building that up using Facebook to go from 0 to 50 properties that we were managing there. And that's important because that's the data that we're using to say, hey, here's a property we can renovate and expect this much ROI from, because we know how much occupancy and how much we can rent out for that. So we from there, I'm like, okay, I see video. This is 2016. This is when Logan Paul and Grant Cardone and Gary Vee and PewDiePie are like starting to like really turn YouTube into a serious business, or like, grow seriously from that. And I'm like, listen, like someone's got to do video. And I was pointing fingers, like trying to get other people to do video. And then in the end, I'm like, all right, I've got a motorbike. I can get a drone. I can go from Bogota to Medellin to Cali to Cartagena, fly the drone, do these vlogs and, show these transformations of buildings. Because I'd done this House Hunters International thing. I saw how they kind of, let's say, portray transformation. So they, we could show the before and the after, and I got the GoPro and started making the vlogs, and we were actually able to grow a business from that, and it was amazing.
Definitely, man. It seems like you were pretty early as being one of the early kind of like gringo in Latin America guys explaining different aspects of living in Latin America, living in Colombia, comparing the cities, kind of giving people a bit of a guide to city, going back like 5 years. So you were definitely early, and I think anyone who was even doing this stuff before the pandemic is early, and you were doing it, of course, 10 years ago, and then in a new life 5 years ago. So you've definitely been ahead of the trend a couple times, and it looks like you also hit a scale not normally seen by digital nomad types, like getting up to 50 plus properties. That's real business territory. That's not like a hobby business anymore.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we turned into a corporation. We had 220 properties in 5 cities. We opened up in Puerto Rico. We hit that one perfectly. That was right before they came in with the Act 20, Act 22 incentives, right? The opportunity zone plus the Act 2022 incentives. Like we fundraised incredibly there for a 40-room hotel in Old San Juan. We were opening up in Portugal. We had 110 people. But I mean, growing pains are real. And when you turn into a serious business, there's money and there's people that come in and want to take control. And, we experienced the hard end of that with the pandemic compounding on that as well. And so that chapter ended in my life and in the other founders as well, as that kind of company was taken out of our control.
And where was the company like? So post the merger, where was it registered, and was everyone else kind of Colombian or?
It was a mix of American, Australian, Colombian. There was like 9 of us, and then we started getting outside investment, and that's a whole nother story. But I mean, because we expanded to Puerto Rico, Panama made sense at the time. Then it was Puerto Rico. Then it was the U.S.
For registering?
Yeah, it was, and there's some realities that I share in an ebook that I have about doing business and real estate in Colombia. Like what we knew, how we started our first projects in the LLC, which is called ASAS in Colombia, the accounting requirements, the tax and the legal requirements. Like we had a very heavy bureaucratic load on our company that became more and more kind of intense as we, like the amount of accounts and the amount of, taxes and different compliance things in Colombia, which is a system that is It is. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of thumbprints. There's a lot of notarization and getting things
Yeah.
stamped across town. Like it's a
I'm sure you guys
heavy
are best
workload.
friends with the notary.
Phew, yeah, I mean, yeah, doing business is, I won't paint, too pretty of a picture for people. Like if they're going to do business there and be compliant with the regulations and the taxes and even
Hmm.
finding information, finding talent that will keep you up to date with those things, it is a rough ride. So in
And
terms of,
these
yeah,
properties that you were accumulating, I guess you were typically just the property manager for them, or were you acquiring properties, or were you leasing them and then like subletting them on Airbnb?
We
Because
we
those are
went
all
through
kind of different
various,
structures.
yeah, we went through all different structures, as kind of we went from 4, 8, 12, like 20 unit, 40 unit. We
Whole
were,
buildings,
yeah, we were doing whole buildings at that point because you get more stable ROI as opposed to one unit and one rental income. Your calendar is going to have gaps, right? But when you have
right?
economies of scale, and that's what we were aiming towards, was newer, bigger, premium buildings.
Hmm.
And that point, so it was edging on crowdfunding at that point. Between So we'd create a business which would own the property, and then the investors would have a share of the business, going through towards, like, more of a fund style, where that was like, okay, we're going to have a multiple properties here. Like we were going into some pretty big business, and that requires a lot of legal and financial type contracts.
Yeah, man. It's I'm sure it's a little bit complicated, but uh, I guess my question would be is what would you suggest? Actually, before we get into that, so could are you familiar with the investor visa in Colombia and how it works a bit? Uh, I had Danny Booboo on as a previous guest who bought real estate in Colombia, in Medellin. He bought like a 4 bedroom, 4 bath apartment. I don't know, maybe you've even been there for
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
It's
so
beautiful.
he used
He
that
knows what
to
he's
get
doing. I think that's gonna be one of the best Airbnbs in town.
yeah. And so, yeah, Danny Boo Boo, aka Daniel Rustine, was a previous guest on the podcast. He was actually the one that suggested that I reach out to you. That kind of got us connected, Sam. So again, obviously, thanks for coming on. I know you were telling me a bit offline, but maybe you could tell for the audience like how you and Danny got connected in Colombia.
Sure. I mean, when you're putting yourself out there and talking about real estate and Airbnbs in Colombia, you end up connecting to other people who are doing the same thing. And so the same way I connected with Sean from Airbnb Automated, Danny
Hmm.
was out there buying property. We connected through Instagram, and then he hosts a Sunday dinner party. Got to give that a little
Hmm.
shout out. He does
Hmm.
a great networking thing. He's putting out great content as well, and I think that's the beauty of what happens once you really start creating and putting yourself out there online, is that you end up coalescing and connecting with other people who are on the similar path. And I think that's what we're seeing internationally right now. Our civilization is coalescing in new ways, and we're creating kind of newer, like-minded communities, and that's happening because we've been able to resonate with each other's content.
Yeah, I think it's dope. I think everyone supports each other. Um, you've been over at Danny's house for Sunday dinner, which is
Yeah,
hilarious. I'm sure that was fun. And so I was saying that I guess Danny used that property to help him with his investor visa into Colombia. The general rule is, or used to be, that if you buy a property for around 100K US, that would come with at least a temporary residency visa, if not permanent. Um, there's it's a bit nuanced. And then Danny also recently mentioned that either they got rid of that, or that the the cost went up in terms of minimum investment. Are they still doing that? Can you still buy property in Colombia to get a temporary or permanent resident visa?
Yeah, you can, but in terms of the latest up-to-date numbers, I don't have them. I've been unplugged for the last couple of years from that realm.
Hmm.
The number changes due to it's based on minimum salaries in Colombia, which
Yeah,
is changing, as well as the conversion rate into dollars, which is also changing, as well as the visa regulations, which is also changing. Um, it
yeah. As long
was
as they have one. I know it was like whatever, like
yeah.
50x monthly, 5,000x
It used to
monthly
be you
income.
for a like $25,000 to a $30,000, you could get a 1 year visa. That would be if you had like equity in a company, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and then if you want to get the 5 year, you're talking about 170,000 with the exchange. That might be down to like 150,000 at this point,
Hmm.
and that will get you a 5 year residency visa. So yeah, there are still ways to do that.
And did you go that route, or did you ever sort of formalize and get like a cedula and stuff?
So I was doing a employee as well as an entrepreneur visa through the company
Uh,
as a founder and partner in that.
mhm,
Because I to get a permanent residency, you need 5 years consecutive visas. I had a
mhm,
2 week gap between my third and fourth year because of a legal paperwork delay. And so during the pandemic, I found out that my application was denied because I had this 2 week gap, which left me without a visa, which meant that I had to reapply. But that was the same time that my real estate investment company chapter was ending, so I didn't have a company to use. So I found myself without a visa for a little bit, uh, and I wasn't traveling internationally. That was when things were still shut down quite a bit. So I was irregular for a while there. I paid $100 and $150 fine on the way out to the Ukraine. I was hanging out with some hex whales, which is a cryptocurrency network. And I came back from my trip, and uh, came up on I got a flag on the system. Hey, like you've already passed your 180 days. And when I paid the fine on the way out, the guy had said, "Yeah, no worries, you can come back in. There won't be an issue." But when I came back in, they said, "Wait a second, you can't. You've already done your 180 days. We got to send you back. You got to go back home." And I was like, "Excuse me, this is my home. I've been here for 11 years." And they're like, "No, you can't come in." So I got done in more ways than one over the last couple of years. And so I went to Panama, and they wouldn't let me out of the airport because of what happened in Colombia. I
How do
spent
they
five
know?
days in airports. What's that?
So Colombia like knew about your, or sorry, Panama knew about your Colombia status?
Yeah, because like I was sent back on the plane there, and then they're like, "No, you have to go back to your home country." And I'm like, "I'm not going to Australia right now." That place is very very strict.
Uh-huh.
So, and I attempted to go back into Cartagena on a I don't know if I can't say that, but I attempted a
Sandblast trip.
re-entry on a I have options, and I figured, well, if maybe it's like old times. But it wasn't. So I got sent back from Cartagena as well. So at that point, there was a friend in Panama who was on board with working on a project together, but I
Hmm.
couldn't get out of the airport. So I had to fly back I took an overnight to Miami to check into the US, and then I could come back to Panama, and then they let me out of the airport, barely. They almost made me stay in a hotel for 3 nights for the COVID thing because I'd been on US soil, even though I was only there for an hour. So that was a 5 day screw up, and it's on me. It was ultimately my responsibility, but I am used to things being a bit more negotiable in Colombia. That has certainly changed. So learn from my mistakes. Um, Visa and migratory issues in Colombia are much more serious and strict now. They are a bit less lenient, and they're not giving visas as easily as before. Like I think worldwide that's kind of a trend. But yeah,
Hmm.
if you're like overstaying and dealing with things in country, I think that's fairly lax in general. But if you're, if yeah, at the airports, they're playing it by the book.
Yeah, it's definitely a trend we're seeing where the tourist visa is not such a guarantee anymore. And just showing up and expecting that maximum allowance of 90 days or 180 days, it's not necessarily going to go down like that. They
Yeah.
might only give you 2 weeks if they see a return flight in 2 weeks. If there's no return flight, they either A, might not let you in, or B, they might give you less than the max. You know what I mean? Things like that, and
Yeah.
it's really up to the discretion of the border guard, the border agent, and we're seeing that in Mexico quite a lot. I'm in Mexico at the moment. Obviously, a country that was known for being extremely open, 180-day visas and visa runs, and basically as open as it gets. To now, in the past couple months, the word must have came down from above. I mean, they're cracking down, and I know lots of people with different Tier A passports, Americans, Northern Europeans, whatever, Germans, and they're coming here and they're expecting 180 days, and they're getting 2-3 weeks.
Mm.
I have a buddy right now who just flew. He just left Playa del Carmen, went down to El Salvador because he got less time than he expected in Mexico.
Mm.
So it's a trend that we're seeing in Mexico. It's something we're seeing in Colombia as well. I think not just in Latin America, but actually worldwide, where it's going to, going forward, it's going to be a little bit trickier to just be a perpetual tourist. And that's why, we kind of do recommend at some point, maybe deciding where you want to live or what would make sense, at least as one of your bases, and starting the path of regularizing and getting some sort of residency permit or something.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, personally, into Mexico, I got a real friendly guy. I mean, sometimes it comes down to the guy you get at the counter, right?
Yeah.
He gave me 180 days, fairly straightforward. So, I mean, as of I was left with the choice of either getting the visa, and to do that, I couldn't even do it from Panama. I had to go back to the U.S. to start that process. But then by that time, this is November when this has happened, so I couldn't get back to my motorbike, my apartment. It was quite the spanner in the works. As of January 1st, I can now, my days are reset. I can enter.
Hmm.
I've figured out a kind of a different plan for now, but in that time, they've also added that uh, if you're a tourist or you plan on entering with a stamp, you do need a vaccine card, which
Hmm.
is a disappointing restriction that they're putting on tourists to Colombia, because tourism was such a new industry that wasn't stranglehold as other industries in that country may be by the groups, the powers that may be. It was a
Hmm.
new industry where so many people were benefiting from, and I saw that tourism was the big driving force in the transformation of so many parts of the country.
Hmm.
That were just became so much more beautiful, and so many more restaurants and nightlife and joy in these places. Went from basically nothing to 4, 5, 6 million tourists a year to getting shut off completely, and now
Yeah.
they're it's dripping in, but nowhere near where it was and where it was reaching.
Yeah, I'd love to see that chart for Colombia because I bet it's more drastic than most countries in terms of not only the run up, in terms of maybe like every year was like a million more tourists than the previous year, and
Yeah.
then the drop off, and then
Yeah, I mean,
Colombia's
2019, it
policy
was
has been.
booming. It was
Mhm.
booming. It was like in Lonely Planet. It was in Forbes. It was hitting all the lists.
Yep, yep. Every group of bros from New York wanted to head down to Medellin for a little trip,
Yep.
you know, and yeah, and then so the Colombian policy lately has been like kind of wish-washy. Like I was there last year, 2021. I think you could get in like no test, no vaccine, obviously. it changes all the time. It's definitely tiring to talk about. But so Sam, what is a bit of your plan of attack going forward? You still have your bike and an apartment in Colombia.
Yeah.
What's like your plan for Colombia and for, I guess, internationalizing yourself in general? And
Yeah. I
uh,
mean, so I made this content getting around on these cities on a motorbike, and I kind of like was, a nomad life kind of thing, but it was all inside Colombia and real estate investment, great diversification.
mhm,
I really value that experience and that whole chapter. The pandemic really, and the closure of that company really, pushed me into like, okay, you say like all terrain, ready for anything. Let's let's see how that is. And
mhm,
then I had a crypto portfolio that I had basically dollar cost averaged into with my peso salary. Most of the value I had, equity in that company that I was really, it hasn't happened till it's happened. But let's say, I walked away from that empty handed. And so it was my crypto portfolio that was pretty humble that I've been able to live off over the past couple of years by getting
mhm,
into those right networks early. Cryptos are essentially networks that you can get bags of, right? And those bags are full of tokens that might be a currency or a voting right
sure.
or a node or a literal piece of the program itself.
Mhm,
And so I've been able to kind of live off that and go internationally. I went to the Ukraine, hang out with the Hex guys there. Hanging out in Miami was a really important piece as well because there's so much going on there. What I'm seeing is the next generation of the internet is being built on top of blockchain technology. And I'm getting back in touch with my roots as a bit of a geeky teenager, hacking systems and troubleshooting problems, and
for
now
sure.
going out into the discords, into the Twitter, into the telegrams, figuring out what are the projects, what are the investments that we can be making right now to build a portfolio that generates passive income. I look at the amount of work we did to deliver 10% ROI from a real estate property, and then seeing a portfolio jump up 10% in a day. Where it's like 10% a month is considered like boring or conservative.
Mhm,
So in terms of ROIs right now, I'm focused on the digital. In terms of lifestyle, I think Medellin and Colombia has one of the most amazing lifestyles to offer on this planet right now. And so, when a lot of people came to me for real estate investment advice, and we were tweaking the real estate to furnish it to start renting out to an average of 8 guests per month, and the logistics around that, like property management, is obviously key in that, but the mental energy, the ROIs. If you're looking for pure ROIs right now, I'm 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 suggesting the digital, or I'm personally investing in the digital, right? If you're looking for a lifestyle play, some place that you can own, you get a visa benefit from it, and you're renting it out when you're not there,
yep.
to at least make it a neutral or positive cash flow investment. Great, right? But if you're looking for pure ROI, even though Colombia is going to emerge, um, the currency risk there as well. A lot of people who bought a $200,000 property in 2010, 10 years ago, in pesos, they've doubled the value of that property. Like the property might be worth 2 or 3 times more than what they bought it for. But to convert those pesos back into dollars right now, they might only be hitting 200, 250K. So it's not
Yeah, it's been a
terrible,
wash.
but a lot of the currency conversion there has really washed a lot
Mhm.
of the profits there.
Yeah, I think like I'm still early in my investing journey in Latin America. I am looking at buying a property somewhere. Um, my initial observation or intuition seems to be that you're not really going to see a lot of equity appreciation unless you find a really good deal. But if you're just buying like a condo or something, I think you can't really expect much in terms of equity appreciation. I think as long as it can act as a store of value and you can sort of keep a consistent valuation, I think that's fine. And then hopefully you can get some cash flow off of the rental income. And so it kind of sucks because if you're investing in Canada, the US, Australia, a lot of the gain is actually from the gain in equity value, where, property values are really going up 10, 15, 20% a year in these countries, and you can realize that value. It's pretty easy to sell.
Mm.
Um, I wanted to ask you about this too, but like it's pretty easy. Well, it's not even easy, but it's easy-ish to buy in Latin America. But apparently, it's pretty hard to sell in Latin America, and your property could be on the market for a pretty long period of time unless you're super aggressive with pricing, right?
Yeah, depending, which market you're in, it can, it can sit around. You'll find most sellers are very, very patient. So it's just a very different experience at all ends of the spectrum. Not having an MLS, bringing the money, declaring that money, making sure you declare it as a foreign investment. Depending whether you become a tax resident there or not, right? If you pass the 183 day benchmark where you become a Colombian tax resident, you have
Uh-huh.
other things to consider there as well. And then the capital gains, making sure that you can show that those taxes have been paid before exiting with that money. So yeah, various extra kind of things to jump through. And again, that's where I'm like, someone's getting a lifestyle play out of it. I'm recommending it. But if it's a pure ROI play, really really understand the administrative load that's going to add to your life.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And, wild thought here, but, there's no MLS in Colombia. You and me, we're both technologists. We're both pretty technical, pretty internet savvy.
Yeah,
Why are we, or why is someone else not building the MLS for Latin America? Why don't we put a little crypto spin on it and kind of, I don't know, like figure out a way to like, bring some liquidity to these markets? Like, how
yeah,
do we set things up so that we could basically present like turnkey opportunities to Western buyers? And look, like I know a lot of people that if you gave them like fully turnkey apartment in Medellin or in Panama or something for 150K, fully turnkey, good to go, I think a lot of people would be like, all right, whatever, let's do it. But it's just like it's an insane administrative workload, like you mentioned. And I don't know, maybe we can do something to bring some liquidity to this massive continent of 500 million people that can
yeah,
barely sell a house.
yeah, yeah. There's opportunities in Latin American real estate for sure. The MLS thing is like when you really get in and are doing business there. And I'll summarize like why that's not happening anytime soon is because there are ingrained institutional groups that like it the way it is. They don't want change. And to try to implement a system where at the basic level, like an MLS, where you've got agents working together, respecting contracts in a judicial system, which is a huge amount of time or money to get through, and where contracts are comes down to like negotiation. It rarely goes to courts because no one wants to deal with that process.
Yep.
So it really is the Wild West in that sense, and people like it the way it is. So like it's like I've seen a lot of people come with great ideas to the country that make absolute sense, and it totally should be done. But just like people don't like change, especially large, powerful groups who control industries don't like change. And you start seeing that there's a lot of these types of structures in Latin America. And
Hmm.
then adding the crypto element in is you've got uh, what will most likely be NFT tokens that will somehow reflect ownership into the escritura, the deed sitting in a
Yeah.
filing cabinet in the notaria downtown. You've got to somehow have those have those pieces working together the legal talent that you'll need to pull that off, the institutional talent, the flexibility, and the up to date administrative talent that you'll need to make that business work is a
Hmm.
huge amount of friction that I
It's
am
true.
gratefully not just choosing not to involve myself with right now,
Right now.
because I'm seeing
Yeah.
inside.
Upending the system is a little bit, that's
Yeah,
going to be,
I'm
and
seeing inside video games, inside these virtual worlds, these metaverses, inside just the social networks that we're using. Digital real estate is frictionless, and after 10 years of dealing with friction inside Colombia, I am so thankful to be operating this
that's
frictionless
mad
environment,
funny. That's very
right?
funny.
Like, because we're seeing video games adopt the next financial system, like the DeFi platforms where you can own a piece of land, use it as collateral to get out a loan, then use that to, get a stable coin to take out more, to buy more. Like, you can do some fancy ass stuff that you can't do in Colombia because there's no leverage for foreigners unless you're going to pay 12, 14% per
Hmm.
year, right? So I'm
Hmm.
seeing inside these virtual environments, we're innovating the next financial system, and so I've got to catch up. I've got some catching up to do, man. As I said, I'm starting from scratch essentially. So I'm diving in there with the knowledge that, years down the road, once the people have blazed the trail into real estate and done the years of hard work it's going to take to have an NFT or a crypto reflect real estate ownership. There's a bunch of projects out there,
Yeah.
like Realty Labs, Dual Fusion Worlds. Like, there's a bunch of projects. I may eventually, once I see a path in there, I might kind of like, okay, hey guys, like, NFT access gets you to all these Airbnbs. You also share in the rental income. It's
That's
turnkey,
dope.
all that kind of stuff. It's there, but I'm happy, kind of focusing on frictionless investments right now.
Makes sense. You definitely went from one side
Yeah,
of the
man.
spectrum to another, and then
Yeah,
maybe in the future you'll kind of get somewhere back in the middle.
yeah, yeah. Because as emergent and explosive and exciting as this digital world is, I've learned some fundamental rules, and like in the digital, everything can vanish instantly. And so
Hmm.
I think a great rule of thumb is to diversify into the physical, diversify into something tangible.
It's true.
As much wealth as you accumulate in the
Mix of online
digital,
and offline.
fix it offline. Yeah. And just as a civilization, the more we dive into this digital environment, let's be completely independent of it, because if it
It's
was
true.
taken away at any moment, let's be completely okay with that. And part of Colombia, I think, is set up for that because they've got some old school systems there, which is a great fail safe for a
Hmm.
highly digitized world, which is essentially creating the more dependent you become on the digital, the more vulnerable you would be to maintain things if it was switched off. So the old school, Chivas and diesel trucks and like farmers and the local food supply chains, like all of that is super valuable, I think, as we go through this great digitalization.
Yeah, supply chains are super crucial, and diversification, online and offline, is super important as well. In terms of your diversification, I mean, you've really built your brand around being sort of like the Columbia guy. Is that something you're going to continue to double? I know you were kind of alluding to it earlier in the conversation, but are you going to continue sort of doubling down on being the Columbia guy, or were you looking to expand a little bit more?
I, it's the because we're in this we're essentially in an attention economy now that we're all on our wherever we point our phones to and tap our fingers, we're essentially determining what we pay attention to, and the
Mhm.
platforms and the networks we pay attention to grow in value, right? So what I was doing in Colombia, I was like, hey guys, like, you guys only know Colombia from Scarface and Pablo, like, how about you get to know this other thing, right? So I was like updating the perspective to the
Yep.
reality. And real estate is
Yep.
so much about that. because people perceive this part of town as, oh, it's like grimy, it's like, it's dirty, it's not safe, right? But actually it was like, well, there's an LGBT scene there, there's universities, there's huge amounts of nightlife. It's located between downtown and 93. I'm talking about Chapinero Central. I picked that off
Hmm.
early in like 2012, 2013. Like, yeah, this is a place to invest.
Yep.
That's perspective that is disconnected from reality. And I mean, even Colombia itself, right? The perspective of the country. Oh no, it's dangerous. It's like, they just think of the one or two associations. I didn't, I crossed into a new country on the motorbike. I'm like, okay, Honduras, what currency are we doing? Like, what's going on? Who's what, where, So I don't
Yep.
expect people to know that, but I kind of grew an audience because I'm like, hey, this is actually what's going on. And I think I'm doing that in the digital now because our perspectives of this digital space limit
Hmm.
us from seeing the opportunity by not knowing what is a distributed ledger, right? We can't imagine how the next Facebook and Google are being built on top of these ledgers that we
It,
can own a piece of and sign into
it's
with our wallets as opposed to our emails.
It's true, and I did notice that with your channel, you're going towards financial literacy and crypto, and kind of talking more about crypto on your channel. It's hard to actually like transition a brand where maybe
Oh
all
yeah.
your existing subscribers and fan base, they want that Colombia content, and now you're giving, I guess, just like sort of more pure crypto content. I went through a similar process on my personal channel where it was like a programming tutorial channel, Python tutorials. And then I started posting a bunch of like my travel stuff just because I was doing cool stuff. And so it's just like a random mix of both right
Yeah.
now. And I mean, so you're sort of like re educating an audience. How's that going?
It's I think a lot of people got different things out of like the content that I was doing. And like I definitely spoke to Colombians. I wasn't kind of like the guy where I'm just like, yeah, look at what they do, look at what they do. No, I was like, I was talking to them and I wanted them on this journey with me. And so
Right,
a lot
right.
of Colombians kind of came along for the ride as well.
Hmm.
And
It's
yeah, so
cool
you
to
start
be
speaking about the
supported by the
digital and
country
people like,
people.
yeah, yeah. Like it's important because it's like, who's going to share your content too? Like a dude who just finds you and like, oh yeah, that's cool. I'm learning about Medellin. He's not going to share it. But a Colombian, student who lives overseas who gets, oh, you're from Colombia. Do you got any Coke? Like, like they want to share their real country, right? So they're much more likely to share a lot of the stuff that I did.
Hmm.
But I think I'm honing in on the same offer, which was turnkey investments. Like, how can we invest in real estate? Like, buy time, right? Like basic investor fundamental, right? Like you can spend 6 months to study the market and, find your own property and go to the furniture, find a renovator, manage the renovation, kit it out, design it. You could do it yourself and save like 20 grand, but you're investing like 200, 300 grand. Like, how much
Yeah.
is your time
People
worth?
don't have that mental capacity or that skill set really.
Investors do.
And
Investors know what's up. They
investors
know
do.
to
You
buy
definitely
time.
want someone. You definitely want someone to do it for you, especially in Latin America. I definitely have a dream of like my Latin life real estate, and I just have some properties up there, and like buy now button. It's literally just like TransferWise, just like Bing Bam Boom, 150 across the wire. Let's go. You're now an owner of a apartment in Asuncion, Paraguay. I was almost thinking like I should get like a local real estate license in Mexico or in Paraguay or in Panama. I don't even know if it's possible in
You're gonna
Panama.
need one.
And then just like get the license, and then I don't know, like funnel traffic, or I don't know. But I think like turnkey real estate would be like sick.
Yeah, it's just working with local laws, taxes, administration, finances. It's tough. It's going to be you're going to need top local talent, not just a random accountant lawyer there. You're going to need the best. And even then, once like seeing Airbnb come in as a new platform, as a changing the way that business was done entirely in the short-term rental market in Colombia, and how buildings deal with it differently than the tourism board and the Dion and different.
So
Yeah.
I have a specific question. So let's just say like live and invest overseas or international living. These are other websites that kind of talk about
Hmm.
Latin America and then funnel to real estate investments. How do they how do they get paid? Like how do they get money on the tail end when it's going to take like 3 to 6 months to close on a property? How does that affiliate link, quote unquote, stay active? How do they sort of like own that client relationship? They really don't. It's just like a referral fee that you're not even getting for like maybe 3, 6 months later, or they just get it up front if anyone like books a call. How have you know what I mean? Like, how are people structuring, um, making money as a referee on the back end?
Yeah, real tough because I've got a few things in place like that, and I expect the best, but I also expect that these it's the wild real estate is the wild west, and it is very hard to enforce these types of referral agreements. Because there's a few developers that are actually locally, they have local experience, they're going to manage it. So they're as close to turnkey. Local developers are starting to get this turnkey Airbnb thing. So we're seeing new
Hmm.
developments actually offer fairly turnkey projects. And those are
Yeah.
some projects that I'm sending out on my newsletter at
Hmm.
sammiller.life. If you want to get those emails, they'll send out straight away. They're fewer and farther between. So the agencies like that, they'll have subscriptions, but a lot of it is conferences. They're doing in-person conferences
Mm.
and selling tickets there, not only to the people showing up, but to the vendors. And they'll also have agreements with the vendors where they'll either get a cut of each investor or sometimes even the project. And that's where you'll find like companies all of a sudden be super bullish on like a pineapple or an avocado farm in Panama and promote it for months at a time because they've got a piece of the actual development.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. Something I mean, I guess offline we'll continue to stay in touch, and I'm going to continue learning about this space because I think it's big, man. I think basically everyone from Canada and the US wants to leave, wants to come to Latin America for a lower cost of living, better climate, $1 beers, and all the rest of it. It just makes so much sense for us. And then along with that, a lot of people are going to want to buy a permanent place, or they're going to want to live in one place sort of permanently. They're going to want to post up on the beach in Costa Rica or whatever it is. And so there's definitely, I think, the trend in the migration from like colder places in Northern Europe and North America to warmer sort of destinations with a high HDI, a high what's it called, like level of living is going to continue. So
Oh yeah,
I think
yeah. I mean,
it's exciting.
if you look at the baby boomer generation who had the economy to bank large amounts of money and be able to choose how to live on this
Hmm.
in this world, they've ended up choosing two or three locations that they frequently visit depending on the seasons. They might
Hmm.
have their lake house in Canada or Arizona, and in the wintertime they'll go to the Mexico, the Guatemala, the Belize, the Medellin, Colombia, Ecuador, the Baños, the Quitos. Like they go to the different locations. They have two or three houses. Maybe Portugal right now. Portugal's probably leading the European favorites right now, but they'll
Yep.
have two or three spots in each of these locations that they're moving between. I think like millennials and younger are going to do exactly the same thing. They don't have the same economy to come in, with their 30-year careers in one job to really fund hundreds of thousands of purchases. So I think we're going to start seeing setups, and we're already seeing that actually, really.
We
Certain
are. I
types
mean,
of
the
like
amount of people moving to Texas and all the rest of it. I
yeah,
mean, there's like 10 million people in Ohio and all over the Rust Belt, and these
yeah,
people are not going to be there 50 years from now. They're going to be chilling with toucans and monkeys in the backyard.
Yeah.
and they're going to be enjoying life a lot more because everything's going online.
Uh-huh.
It used to be that people moved to a specific city or location in order for work or for a job, and
Yeah.
they followed the openings of factories or the openings of mines or these sort of like commercial hubs.
Hmm.
And we just don't need to do that anymore. We don't need to move in order to work in a specific local area. And so people are sort of moving somewhere where they can surf all day or where they can sort of pursue the hobbies and have a high standard of living.
Yep. Yep. And the internet now, especially with the Starlink, SpaceX, right? Like, I think we're going to see this
Yeah,
dispersion. We've seen this
that's gonna be
urbanization
insane.
trend, and I think that'll still happen in especially more like lower economic places. But once this digital economy spreads further, yeah, we're going to see that. I think we're going to see less people buy less and actually just rent more. So we're seeing
Mm.
some people offer like monthly stays, like outside. They offer monthly stays in all of these,
Yep.
hotspots around the world.
Selena.
Yeah, I mean, the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, they say you will own nothing and you will be happy, right? So I think they're very they're all about, yeah, you don't need to buy, you can just rent. Stay a renter is kind of the trend that they're going to push a lot of people. But obviously, owning real estate is one of the oldest and safest investments that you could be doing. So I think it's about doing both, tapping into the digital, but also diversifying into the physical.
Definitely, man. Even like farmland in Latin America.
Oh yeah,
um, I'd be down. I'd be down. And where in Mexico are you right now? If you're revealing
Guadalajara.
that, you're in Guadalajara.
Yep.
Sick. And are you chilling in Guadalajara? Are you gonna make it out to the coast?
We're doing about a month here. I don't know if we'll make it to the coast this time. Then we're heading to Egypt. I don't know. Things are heating up though. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks. The world scenario might be escalating to the next chapter of our adventure here. But yeah, if it continues calmly, we'll go to Miami a little bit, then Egypt, and we'll see from there. Yeah, we're really taking it month by month right now.
For sure. I think you have to be flexible these days. Guadalajara to Cairo is an insane trip. Is that just a bucket list thing that you always wanted to do? Check out the
Yeah,
pyramids, or
yeah, we've got some friends doing a retreat there, and so it's going to be the proper doing it right, doing the pyramids, the Nile boat cruise, the air balloons, some sound ceremonies in the pyramids. Hopefully, so we'll see how we go.
that sounds dope, man. That sounds dope.
Yeah,
You've been super, what's the word? Generous with your time. We've hit the hour and a half mark, so we'll start to let you go. And do you have any shout outs or things that you want to promote, talk about?
yeah. I mean, I'm I'm actually creating a Discord community because the next generation of the internet is being built out in Discord. Whether you're
Hmm.
talking Web3, NFTs, even just doing business like DAOs, corporations are going to be made in DAOs, which are essentially a new way of doing business.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm creating a Discord which we talk about crypto trading, passive income, NFTs, all that good stuff. I want to bring together like-minded people right now, just to start bring together builders who are stacking the right skills and stacking freedom. It's actually called Freedom Stackers. So yeah, jump on the Discord. Follow along on Instagram. I'm documenting my journeys into the digital and the physical. Sammiller.life is the website. Sammiller.life on Instagram as well.
Sweet, man.
Appreciate you
So I'll
having me on, man.
definitely, absolutely, and I'll put the links to your Instagram website, and if you send me the Discord, I'll add a link to
Yeah,
that
it's
as
all on the
well.
website, sammiller.life.
Dope. And I need to do this too. I've been debating between Telegram and Discord for getting a bit of a community started, probably in addition to Facebook. What do you recommend?
Telegram for a casual chat, Discord if you actually want to collaborate and get shit done. It's like Telegram is like once it gets big, it's just a stream of
It's like a
chatting.
WhatsApp thing.
Whereas Discord, I mean, it's originally designed for gamers to work together and get missions done in different games, right? But now
Yeah.
programmers are using it. Communities who want to actually like, it's like having a gear rack. You know, in the Matrix, when the gear rack kind of rolls up and you've got your resources in place and you know, like that's Discord. So there's a bit of a learning curve, but look around, like people are building the next generation of the internet there. The NFT play to earn games, DeFi
Yep.
programming, like it's all going down on the Discord.
All right, I'm gonna have to get into it for sure.
Yep.
Cool, man. Well, dude, thanks again for coming on. This was unreal to hear about. Yeah, your trip, Canada to Buenos Aires, to hear about you getting set up in Colombia, spending 10 years in the real estate game, the Airbnb game, short-term rental game in Colombia. And, it sounds like you're getting really smart about crypto as well. And that's definitely going to be big, and definitely looking forward to following your journey with that. And let's stay in touch, man. Let's see if we can do something with real estate in Latin America in the future.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Like no regrets. Like I remember there was like, oh, how am I going to make it work? And I've met people over the years who have come out because, and sometimes because they saw my content, like, hey man, like you helped me kind of make that decision. And I always ask them like, do you have any regrets? And they're like, never. They never do. Because I know it's like people are in their home, they're in their routine, they're in their system, and they're doubting whether it's a thing. Just like have your plan B, have your contingency plan, whether it's putting your stuff in a bodega, but like detach, give it a go, try it first, give it a couple months. Yeah, I promise you won't regret it. Like I haven't regretted a single day being out here and living this way.
Dope, man. Well, enjoy Guadalajara, and I'll catch you soon.
Nice one. Thanks, man.